DGR committee with us. So for the sake of saving everyone's time, we can get this party started. Hello, everyone. This is the Development and Government Relations Committee meeting of the City Council in Holyoke. My name is Tessa Murphy-ROMBOLETTI. I am the chair of the Development and Government Relations Committee, and I am coming to you live from Zoom. This is not ideal. However, I was traveling last week and I am being overly cautious and want to protect the health and safety of the public and my fellow committee members. So that's why I'm coming to you from Zoom. But we are joined by some great people tonight. We have our DGR committee members, Councilor Vacant, Councilor McGivern, Councilor Bartley, and Councilor Rivera. So thank you all for joining. Also on the call tonight, it looks like we have Councilor Maldonado Velez zooming in and Councilor Will Puello. I am also joined this evening by some special guests. We have our state delegation here with us tonight. Thank you so much to Representative Patricia Duffy for being here, as well as our state senator, John Velis. Thank you both very much. And later this evening, we're also going to be joined by the team from the Office of Planning and Economic Development, John Dijak and Aaron Vega. And we've also invited representatives from OneHolyoke and Wayfinders for items that are on our agenda for a little bit later. But just for those who are tuning in, we are currently coming to you from the City Council chambers, and obviously we are also on Zoom. The city's website is streaming this meeting online, and of course, for everyone's own information, we are recording this meeting so that folks can watch this later if they so choose. But, you know, with that, this is my first committee meeting as not only chair, but as city councilor for DGR. And we have a pretty good agenda for this evening. And so with that, I'm going to introduce
motion to take up item 1.
Thank you. Thank you.
Second.
Great. So Councilor Bartley actually filed this order a few months ago to invite John Velis and Pat Duffy, our state delegation, to a DGR meeting as a way to provide us with an update on what everything that's happening in the world of state representatives and state senators. So I'm going to actually turn it over to them, and then we can open things up for questions. And I will definitely be relying on some of my friends there in council chambers to make sure that I don't miss anyone. And I'll also be on the lookout for hands being raised in the Zoom. So with that, I will turn it over to Pat and John. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It is so great to be here. Congratulations, Chair Romboletti Murphy, on your first committee meeting. Looking forward to being there in the chambers with everybody. And it's, I'm really excited for this great new city council, this experience, the combination of the experienced voices and the new voices. You guys are really doing great. I think it's a great year and a great time in Holyoke. And so John and I are going to sort of pass it back and forth, but we can definitely be interrupted anytime with questions. And so I don't know, John, you want to say your hellos?
Yeah, I just want to, thanks, Rep. I just want to say, well, first and foremost, I just want to say congratulations to all of the new city councilors. It's going to be absolutely awesome to work with you. You know, I'm one of these lawmakers and elected officials that believes that we are best when we work together. And I have to tell you, I currently represent 11 cities and towns, and I just think it's so critical and important what you folks do and invite us here to have these conversations, because I'm here to tell you that it doesn't happen everywhere. And we'll have a back and forth tonight wherever we'll go. We're all on the same team here. We all want what's best for Holyoke and beyond. So I'm just really excited to be here, and I'm really excited, like the rep said, to hopefully at some point in time you'll invite us when we go to the Holyoke chambers, the city council chambers, and do this in person. So just really grateful to be here with all you tonight. Hopefully we're gonna have a really productive discussion. And again, congrats to all of the new council members, and obviously a congrats and hello to all of the returning council members. Happy to be here.
And so I'll start us off, and just to echo again what John said, it's all about partnership. I've had great working relationships with all of you. And speaking of partners, like, I am so lucky to have my partner in the Senate, John Velis. Right back at you. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to start with, I'm sure what's burning on everyone's mind, home rule petitions. I've got 4 home rule petitions, and they're all in the House right now. They're working their way through the House, so it's all on me right now. So I'll start with the update on the 2 easiest ones to talk about. You all have sent in, and I filed 2 acts that remove residency requirements for the city solicitor and the head of the DPW, respectively. So it was like a week or so ago, we had the public hearing. Patty Devine from the Department of Public Works came and joined me and testified. That is always super helpful, because the language is really, it's straightforward, but we want to convey that urgency. I know the departments are understaffed right now, and we want to widen the pool of applicants. So those have been reported out favorably. They were reported out shortly after the hearing. They're moving through 2nd and 3rd readings, and I am hopeful they're gonna be passing the House, and I'll be handing them off to the senator like really shortly. So those are looking good. A little more complicated is in November or December, you all passed an act. It was an act relative to the use of recreation vehicles in the city of Holyoke, sort of following the model of what's happening in Springfield. My friend and colleague, State Rep Orlando Ramos, filed a home rule petition around regulating and perhaps even seizing some of the dirt bikes that have been controversial recently. I know that you were debating something else, another similar measure last night, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know the similarities and differences. We filed the language that you all passed, and it followed Rep Ramos's home rule petition into the Committee on the Judiciary. And we just last week had a conversation with Chair Day, and their counsel is of the opinion that actually a lot of the stuff in there, that we as a city, as a municipality, already have a lot of these, the ability to do a lot of this. So Rep Ramos and I are gonna put together a meeting on that with House Counsel, and I think I'll reach out to the mayor and to Todd, the city solicitor. So we will get you all up-to-date information on that. Yeah, I don't pretend to be an expert on that. So awesome. We should have a conversation and see what we can do, what we can already do. And last but not least is an act providing for the recall of elected officials in the city of Holyoke. You know, you all passed, I believe in like around June, procedure for the recall of elected officials who are elected for terms longer than 2 years. So I filed that in late June, early July. There was a hearing September 15th, and that is still in the Committee on Election Laws. They have not moved on that. We're not the only ones. There's a number of pieces of legislation in that committee that have not moved. And yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. The chair has been like, please give me a little while, because that committee has been taking up pretty extensive legislation that both the Senate and last week the House passed. It's called the Votes Act, and what the legislature is proposing is to make permanent a lot of the expanded voting access that we had throughout the pandemic. So both chambers have agreed on making permanent early voting, pretty popular here in Holyoke, permanent mail-in voting. So the whole absentee ballot thing would go away, substituted by mail-in voting. And the difference in the two chambers is the Senate included same-day registration. I'm afraid that did not make it through the House. I did support it, and I voted for all the amendments that included it. But there's room for some compromise, maybe election day registration, which the Mass Municipal Clerks have said they support. They feel that they could handle that. So everything that's in the bill is fantastic. And there's just, it'll have to be worked out in conference committee. That all being said, Chair Dan Ryan has had his hands full, and it is now my job to turn his attention to this home rule petition. So that's sort of the update with home rule petitions. So I'd be happy to take any questions, or if John has something he wants to pick up on now, talk more about other legislation, etc.
Well, I would. The only thing that I'd say, it might make sense to, as we go throughout the subject matters, maybe to kind of do a little Q&A, at least to see if there's any questions and answers before I move on. I guess to close out just the home rule side of it, needless to say, as soon as my friend sends them over to us from the House rather, we will obviously get right on that in the Senate. And yeah, so this will obviously, right when we get the word that they are done, it's a really, in another instance where this is not the case in all of my districts, but a lot of times there is a tendency for home rules to get caught up in I hate saying this, but the relationship between the senator and the rep, and who does what, who files it first. And what I'm here to tell you is that is most certainly not the case with my friend Rep Duffy and myself. It is the most seamless and easy relationship. So again, right when we get word that the House has passed them, we will immediately move them through the Senate. And then Rep, I don't know if I'll defer to whoever, Tessa or the counselor, I should say, if you want to do questions right now, or you want me to move on to some other stuff.
I have.
That's a great point, and I'd welcome if there are counselors in attendance that would like to ask any questions, at least related to some of the information that was just provided, and then we can keep going and open it up for more general questions. If there's anyone in council chambers.
Councilor Vacant, I have a question and a clarification.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So Rep Duffy, just to clarify, last night when we took up the matter relative to the home rule petition on the off-road vehicles that were in judiciary with Springfield on, it was only to clear the jacket out and to acknowledge that the council had already forwarded the amended language as desired to you and the state house.
That makes perfect sense. I'm sorry, I saw it on the agenda.
Yeah.
And, there you go.
It was just housekeeping. And the only thing I'll throw out there relative to the mail-in voting, and it's a question, it's not something I know the answer to. I'm just wondering if we're going that far into changing our voting laws if we might need to look at an amendment to the state constitution relative to that. So I would just ask that that be looked into, if it perhaps already has been asked and answered.
I believe that vetting already occurred, but there's nothing wrong with going back and checking on that.
I just don't know.
Senator.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
And I would just say on that, just to follow up, and it doesn't pertain to what the counselor just asked, I do unfortunately anticipate what's probably going to be a drawn out conference committee on this one. In terms of there are many similarities, there are many really good things, but I think there's some sticking points that could have the impact of slowing this down a little bit. And I think the most important thing on this stuff, and it's been very critical to kind of keep in contact with the clerks who are really at the end of the day, I mean, let's be honest, election law and how we carry out our elections, I would argue anyway, the most important player is really the local folks who are really in charge of facilitating that and effectuating that. So their buy-in is absolutely paramount in my opinion, because at the end of the day, we don't want to be in a position where we pass legislation and we have clerks throughout the Commonwealth who are looking at us and saying, come on, what are you doing here? We don't have the ability to do it. We don't have the resources to do it. So I know on the Senate side, there's been a lot of conversations in our caucuses just about making sure that, and we can do this through the conference committee process. And I know the House shares this desire and intent that we don't want to make this more burdensome and more complex than it needs to be for the folks on the ground who, again, will be carrying this out and making sure that the desired intent is met. And I think that's a really big part of this, because there's always areas of legislation that, we end up doing and we end up passing, but ultimately the ones who see that carried out are not us. And we need to be really mindful of that.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
And just in closing, I just want to thank you, Rep. Duffy, for giving us a nice, clear update on these home rule petitions. Sometimes they get lost over time a little bit. So thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. That's the job.
Any other questions from any counselors in chambers or on this call? All right.
I got a question, my bad.
Yeah, go for it, Will.
It's like a general question. It's not related to what was talked about. Is that okay, or are we doing those later? Or?
Oh, it's all right.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for being here, guys. I know I've talked to you guys in passing in the hallway. I was just curious about the reimbursement rates for the schools. If there's been any talk about working on those, at least for like gateway cities, because as you guys know, we had that override vote that failed. Now we're trying to do the one middle school, and there's talk about how much we can afford and how we can't. So I'm curious if there's been any talk on that to see if maybe we can say, hey, can we help these communities out a little bit that are, inflation's up, building costs are up. So I'm curious if there's been any talk there. And thanks again for being here.
Yeah, of course. There's a cap, and it always needs to be reexamined. I don't know, Senator, if you want to.
Yeah, just to be clear, and I just want to make clear, I heard it properly. I hate saying this, but I just recently had a baby, and I heard my baby, my new parental instinct kind of just went the other way. I was listening to make sure that I didn't, my baby wasn't crying. But this was a question about are we talking about reimbursements for schools and the rate that they're reimbursed at, and the projects in Holyoke? The projects being the actual projects that are out there.
Yeah, with the MSBA.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so here's what I'll say. I filed a bill at the beginning of this session, and obviously I wasn't the state senator at the time. I was a rep, but I started to, as I began the process of kind of getting out into Holyoke and knocking on doors, I spent more time talking about kind of the school and the override vote, et cetera, than anything else. So I almost felt like, although I wasn't involved, I was a passive observer, if you will. And I got a lot of those issues. So, and I know I speak for the rep here. We both have a very, very tight, good relationship with the MSBA. In fact, I had a lengthy conversation with them just yesterday. And long story short, I filed the bill at the beginning of this session, which essentially said, look, we've got certain schools, 3 to be exact, 3 school districts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that are in receivership. One of them, of course, being Holyoke, as we know. So I filed a bill that would essentially say that for districts that are in receivership, that we have the ability to go above and beyond the reimbursement rate other than what it is. And I had a lot of back and forth with MSBA on that. And they said that if you narrowly tailor that language, and if you limit it to districts that are in receivership, this is something that we absolutely would love to have a conversation with. So fast forward to what we have right now, which is all these bills need to move out of committee, get sent to a study, they get sent to further on in the process. So I reached out about these bills in the Education Committee the other day, and the chair on the Senate side, Senator Lewis, said that both your bill, John, me, and Senator Comerford also filed a bill involving reimbursement rates. And it's the Senate's intent right now to look at these bills and try to pass something this session involving MSBA reform and essentially dealing with the reimbursement rates. So I guess what I would say is that's kind of the abstract, if you will, that's out there right now, because I know that that's an issue near and dear not only to yourself, but a lot of the counselors who are here in attendance. What MSBA also said in that phone call yesterday is that we know that there's still a lot of things before we can kind of get into a conversation about numbers, if you will. There's a certain things, and I just want to make sure that I have this right because I reduced it to writing, but there are certain things. They mentioned an enrollment study, and they're looking at enrollment numbers going 10 years down the line, a feasibility study from Holyoke and stuff like that. So essentially, when I broached the topic yesterday with the MSBA about funding for Holyoke, to be very candid with you, there are multiple communities in the district that have school projects going on right now, but Holyoke obviously is the one where we're really focused on with laser-like precision that reimbursement rate. The MSBA's position was that until we kind of get a better idea about, the design, the enrollment numbers, and the feasibility study, anything on numbers would be premature.
I guess I'm reiterating what the senator said, but yeah, in the abstract, absolutely. There's always budget amendments. The Gateway Cities Caucus is always united in looking at cities with less financial, resources really doing better by them. So yes, in the abstract, absolutely. This is a discussion and a fight that many of our colleagues are taking up. Specifically for Holyoke, this project, we're still walking down that road, but we're your advocates, and we do have great relationships with the MSBA and can get whatever information folks need quickly.
Great.
And thank you for that question, because that was essentially one of the main things, one of the main topics I was going to broach. So thank you in advance for asking.
Wonderful. Perfect. Any other follow-up questions related
Yes,
to this topic?
if I could,
Yep.
Chair Murphy-ROMBOLETTI. It's Joe McGivern. John,
Hey, Joe.
Pat, welcome, and thank you for being here, and thank you for what you do respectfully for this great city and for your districts. We're very lucky to have both of you working on our behalf. On the MSBA formula, I want to go out and say that the MSBA is doing their job. We had Jack McCarthy, I believe, in a few years ago. He explained to us the history of the formula, what was happening across the Commonwealth, and a charge to the MSBA that we got to stop the open checkbook. The last school the city of Holyoke built was the Dean Vocational School, which is an incredible, beautiful school down near the river that has served our children, for decades now, since the 1980s. And still a good school, because the history of Holyoke is we take care of our school buildings. We needed some work on the high school. We didn't qualify to build a new high school because our high school is in good shape. But we needed a new lab, some additions, some air conditioning, some things to make it better, and the MSBA came through on that. Those formulas fit our budget, because the idea was there's very few communities in the Commonwealth that can afford school building construction. And now with the construction rates going crazy, we are desperate for the help that the Commonwealth could provide, so we could build new school buildings, which are going to not only build a new middle school, but we'll be able to consolidate some elementary schools, which will save money. We'll be able to take some buildings that are not in good shape offline, perhaps sell them, put them back on the tax rolls. It's a plan that has been well thought out by the school department, by the mayors that have been participating in it the last few years. And, I realize we have to, submit a new design and go through another feasibility study, but the other numbers are there. We have 1,100 projected middle school students. We fell through on trying to accommodate the 1,100 for reasons on our end, not the state's end. But even if the override passed, we did not have the votes to go forward with that project, because it would have still meant we were bonding for $75 million with the 54% reimbursement rate. Our per capita income is the lowest in the Commonwealth. Our poverty level is the highest per capita. It's not because Hoyokers, were born or poor. It's because we have the affordable housing, the institutions that support, people of low income, and we attract poverty. And we do a very good job of working and making making the necessary needs for this segment of our population. We also are working on trying to break the poverty cycle, and the way you break poverty cycles is 1, education, 2, job opportunity. And this all goes hand in hand. But we cannot support the current formula and build schools that we need. And it's a bit unfair when you look at surrounding bedroom communities that don't face that poverty that we do. And yet, why is it, that the city of Holyoke is solely responsible to foot the bills for all the things that come with the poverty rate that we have? It's something that, and this is why I always believe Chapter 70 is correct. Rep. Vegas, Senator Velis, you guys did a great job before Pat got there on tweaking the Chapter 70 formula to kind of address what I just said. It's the same thing with the school building construction formula. MSBA is just doing their job. They do a great job. Across the Commonwealth, they work hard with all communities, and they've worked hard with us. But we need the legislature, the Senate, and the governor to recognize gateway communities need a different formula. We need it because we are providing a service to all of the Commonwealth in terms of when you have a high poverty student population, you have a high special needs student population. And it costs a lot of money to address that the proper way. We do that. But financially, we need the help of the legislature, the Senate, the governor, to make that formula, recognize what we do here in Holyoke. And we appreciate your efforts. I know both of you get it. I know it's something very difficult to sell to a lot of your colleagues in the Senate and in the House, but it's something that I just hope you keep working on, and I hope we can come to something that makes a little bit more sense for the gateway communities.
Councilor McGivern, that is so well said, really well said. And that's why actually the Gateway City Caucus is such a powerful tool for all of us, because it's all cities where we all get it. You know, it's us, it's Springfield, it's Lawrence, it's Lowell. And, you know, we always band around these kinds of reforms, these budget amendments. And I think it's interesting that you talked about Chapter 70 at the same time as the reimbursement rates. There's an argument that the reimbursement rates should actually look like a Chapter 70 formula, you know, where we get extra funding because we have students who have special needs, and we're happy and proud to provide for them. Well said. Well said.
Yeah, and I just ditto. Just very, very eloquent, very well said. I mean, I think there is a, you know, the Student Opportunity Act, we lifted from 200 million to 800 million, the annual spending cap for MSBA. Great start, going in the right direction. But to your point, Counselor, there is there is, you know, gateway cities in their entirety. But I think I would take that even a step further, and I did. My office did in our conversations yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, with Senator Lewis, that there are some unique needs and challenges right here in Holyoke that I would argue and did argue that are compelling enough that, you know, to the extent that we can, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has an obligation to really ensure that the students in this community receive their constitutional right to an education. Let's be honest, it is a constitutional right in Massachusetts, and you got to have some semblance of buildings that are consistent with that right. So, you know, we've had this discussion before, hear you loud and clear, and what we can tell you is that we will continue to pound that table in support of this. There is definitely a recognition from colleagues that there are some special needs here in Holyoke, and we will continue to be the most loud and zealous advocates to do that. And I was pleasantly surprised with the, not surprised, I was pleasantly excited, maybe is the right word, with the conversations that I had with Senator Lewis yesterday about willing to kind of tinker with the formula a little bit in a positive way, certainly a positive way for communities like Holyoke.
Thank you. It's greatly appreciated.
Other questions at the moment from counselors? Or we can have our delegation cover whatever they were planning to next.
So I will, Red, if I could, well, do we?
No, please
more,
do.
There are no questions on that. I don't want to move ahead.
It's like you're good to go.
Okay. I mean, the only other thing that I was going to say is that, you know, we're approaching a time period, and I think it's important for everybody to know that there's really going to be, I can see 3 sources of revenue coming up where there's an opportunity for certain funding, if you will. And it could be very insignificant, not insignificant funding. It could be on the smaller dollar amount of funding, and then there's an opportunity for potentially some bigger ones. So I just kind of want to flag them, because I know you could be forgiven for kind of looking at what we do and then seeing some type of funding source go by, finding out about it after the fact, and then it being too late. So obviously at the state level, we, not to be confused with what the City of Holyoke has that went directly from the feds to the municipalities, which is a different topic. We, as a Commonwealth, have $2.3 billion left in ARPA funding. And if you kind of go back and you look at the debate that, again, you could be forgiven for if you didn't pay attention to it, there was a lot of back and forth between the governor and the legislature about the best way to kind of dole out ARPA money. And I think we kind of reached a pretty good consensus where the legislature took control of some of that money, gave Governor Baker $200 million to do what he wanted to do with it. But then the legislature's posture was more of a, let's be a little bit more deliberative on this. Let's be a little bit more measured, and let's let these needs in our communities evolve. So we slowed that process a little bit, passed a package that was left over from the FY22 budget, as well as ARPA funds. And then we said, okay, we're going to hold off and we're going to wait till later on to do another ARPA package, because chances are there's going to be needs and funding needs that evolve after the fact. Additionally, we wanted to make sure that, because these are one-time revenues and they're not revenues that are going to come in on a recurring basis, we wanted to ensure that they weren't duplicative with the feds. And I'm thinking, the infrastructure bill that was passed, that there's going to be an opportunity for communities like Holyoke and beyond to take advantage of. And because, again, it was one-time revenue, again, we just wanted to make sure that we weren't spending money on things that the feds were going to do. So I think there was a lot of merit in waiting. So we've got the ARPA bill that we will pass at some point in time in the future. I don't want to say exactly when that will be, but it will be in the future. We just passed a COVID supplemental budget, but we both have heard that there will be actually, I don't want to speak for the rep. I know I have heard.
Yes, I have heard too. Yeah.
Okay, so there's going to be another COVID supplemental budget that we deal with the next 2 to 3 months. There will be an opportunity for us to advocate for Holyoke in that vehicle as well. And then, of course, we've got the big bucket source of funding in the room, which is the FY23 budget that the governor obviously made his recommendations just a couple weeks ago. My friends in the House will take it up first in April, and then we will take it up in the Senate. All three of those buckets of revenue, there's an opportunity for you folks and nonprofits and everybody else to kind of reach out to us and say, hey, we think this is really important for the following reasons, and we want you to advocate for it. So that's out there. And then I guess I would just say the last thing I would say, and it's a completely different area, and this is more something that I think this might be more on the Senate side because there's less of us, but I should say this is more on the Senate side under this Senate president, that we kind of have our own little niches, if you will, in terms of what committees we are the chair people of. I think as many of you know, I'm the current chairman of the Veterans and Federal Affairs Committee. And there's a topic that obviously is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts on this call, which is the Holyoke Soldiers Home legislation. That's going to be coming up right around the corner. I know the rep will weigh in here in a second on that and tell you there's been movement on the House side. There will be movement on the Senate side. And I bring that up. It has really nothing to do with revenue, only to say that, again, on the Senate side, the committee that we are the chairperson of, all issues involving that matter comes through this committee, and the Senate president really wants us to kind of be the subject matter experts on issues. So any and all things involving veterans and our relationship with the federal government, I am the chairman of that committee, and we are taking up the Holyoke Soldiers Home bill. So at any point in time, feel free to reach out to myself and the rep, because these bills dealing with the oversight and the governance of the Holyoke Soldiers Home, I would say, are imminent in terms of the time. We're talking, I think, the next couple months. And that's really all I had from my end. Certainly, Rep, turn it back to you if you've got anything else.
I would just add, there's a Senate bill concerning governance of the Holyoke Soldiers Homes, both soldiers' homes, and there's a House bill. They're a little bit different, although a lot of the same principles. There's a lot in those bills that are really good, but I'm on the record in the media. There are some proposals that weaken the regional board, and I'm on record in the media with House leadership, etc., that I've got a lot of concerns about that. So the debate is to come. The debate is to come. Yeah.
Thank you. At this moment, I will pause and see if our fellow city councilors have any questions for our state delegation.
I do, Tessa.
Councilor
Yes, go
Bartley.
for
Yeah. Hi, John. Hi, Pat. I don't really need a specific answer right now because these are kind of broad. But I'd like to have you for the next time you're in here, or if you have kind of a bridge to answer now, because I'm just looking at the clock. So, just on four or five different issues to you both. One for Chapter 90 funds. There's always a little controversy about what the governor's going to do, what the House, what the legislature is going to do. It seems like you guys have $300 million, the governor has $200 million. So we're hopeful that obviously for Chapter 90 we can have a little more success with that in the coming year. Second of all, on the Soldiers Home, it's my hope and expectation that we won't have this statewide body controlling Chelsea and Holyoke. It'll be Holyoke have its own board of trustees, and Chelsea can do whatever it wants. So I'm really hopeful that that's going to continue to be the case, because local control is, I think we might be able to agree in this room, that's probably serves the veterans best. Third, on a local issue, this is something that I filed about a year ago in light of what happened with the Supreme Judicial Court. They ruled that Section 17A of Chapter 85 was unconstitutional relative to panhandling restrictions, but they didn't say in there that you can't have anything. So we have, in my estimation, an underlying crisis that's been going on for 10 years relative to panhandlers, not just staying stagnant on a corner with a sign. Those days are over. It's now marching up and down a public way on the median on a regular basis, waving to people, knocking on windows. So we know that the law of Mass General Law 85-17A is unconstitutional, but we know that you're smart enough and talented enough to work on another piece of legislation that would possibly meet constitutional muster. I mean, think about the panhandlers with the shopping carts directly in front of fire stations on Northampton Street and elsewhere. When they're parading out of there for an emergency, what happens then if somebody is injured? Is somebody standing in the middle of a public way with his back to a fire engine who's hobbling along? So this is a constant, continuous crisis up and down Northampton Street and elsewhere, and there's got to be some kind of a rational basis for a law that can meet muster, and I don't want that to just slip. So this case is only from a year or two ago. So we know that the state law, as it's written, is no-go, but you got to come up with something better. Along those lines, Holyoke has an increasing homeless population, and it's sleeping in doorsteps, it's sleeping on church walkways, it's sleeping in Veterans Park, but more to the point, it's sleeping out of view, but still within the city boundaries. I hope one or both of you have done what I've done, which is go with police and see the encampments that are below Mitchell Field, below the dike in Springdale Park. I hope you take the opportunity to not just take a ride, for a photograph in a fire truck with a turnout gear or whatever. I hope you can go take a look and see exactly what's happening with the hundreds, if not thousands, of needles that are strewn on the ground. So there is a homeless population and a drug problem that we cannot continue to turn our back on or just pretend it's not there, because it is there. So this is going to require dollars, but it's going to require a lot of thought on how best to address it. The last thing I hope you'll take up, and I know Pat's done a great job with this, but John, whatever is happening in the Senate relative to sports betting, it's embarrassing. So we have sports betting all around us in New England. Half the states in America have it, but Massachusetts once again leads the nation in we got to figure it out, we got to study it, and we got to. It would be, in my opinion, a game changer for a lot of small businesses, and I hope it's going to be allowed to reach into not just the three casinos, but I hope there's going to be small businesses. I mean, that the same small businesses that still allow the Keno stuff and the scratch tickets and all that. Somehow when that passed in 1972, when my father was speaker, the whole world was going to end right then and there. The whole state is going to. Well, obviously, it's become a massive revenue source for cities and towns. And why can't the Massachusetts Senate get its act together and come up with something to get this passed this year. So, look, those are just my 4 or 5 thoughts that I hope, I'm not expecting answers on this, and you can't wave a wand, but that's what I'm hearing, and that's what I've been thinking about, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Counselor, no, go ahead, Brett.
Okay, I'll go quick and then I'll let you speak for the whole Senate. So thank you. Thank you. Number 1, Chapter 90, agree. And also, you're right. These are topics for like a further conversation, and I look forward to that, to us being able to come back and really dig into these. But yes, Chapter 90, agree. Soldiers Home, I agree. 3 and 4, panhandlers, homelessness. You're right. This is a huge, large conversation. I do my best to be involved, and I know the senator does too. I do my best to be involved with the really incredible people here in this city who are working to support, folks with mental illness, folks who are hard on their luck, folks who are suffering with substance abuse addiction. I always want to support that work. It requires a holistic solution, and I would argue non-punitive approach. So those are conversations I'm in all the time, with many of you actually, and the mayor and the senator, and we've got to keep talking about it.
Yeah, thanks, Rep. Just briefly, my take. Chapter 90, not only agree, just strenuously agree. To me, it's the biggest no-brainer in the world. An uptick on that. Not to diagnose what I feel is the problem, but I do think that this issue is one that is embraced much more readily from those of us west of Worcester because of the roads, et cetera. There's a lot of reasons, I think, that, again, in Chapter 90, we could spend hours on talking about how that formula needs to be revisited. We need more money. It is a pittance what we get for roads, and I would add bridges in our Commonwealth, and that's a safety issue. And not to go on my soapbox, but I truly believe that before we get into much larger transportation projects, I believe let's start with the basics. And to me, the most basic thing you can begin with in transportation projects is fixing up your road. So agree with you 100%. Soldiers Home, echoing the rep. And I would just, in addition, say that the main reason I agree with that, there's the local control element of it that I think is intimately tied to what I'm about to say. But the other part of this is that the Holyoke Soldiers Home is vastly different from the Chelsea Soldiers Home. The Holyoke Soldiers Home, for all intents and purposes, is a nursing home for folks who happen to be veterans. Whereas the Chelsea Soldiers Home, at least currently as it made up, is primarily what's called a DOM facility, which is really speaking of, folks who are at risk of maybe homelessness or other issues for just a multitude of reasons, need a little bit more of assistance versus, again, that Holyoke Soldiers Home model, which is more of a nursing home model. So that in and of itself tells me that we need folks on a board who are just appreciative and understanding of that issues, because they're two different homes. And then there's all of the chain of command issues that I think raise creating another body. Look, I'm in the military. The more you add to a chain of command, the more you make it more blurry. If you add another entity to that chain of command, i.e. this statewide board, it makes it more blurry. It increases the opportunities for there to be breakdown in communications. So it's just a bad idea for, again, a multitude of reasons. Counselor, I'm going to ask you to send me that case. My understanding is that case was a First Amendment case. And anytime that there are these thorny constitutional issues, not to say it can't be done, we act on constitutional issues all the time, but whenever the SJC or the U.S. Supreme Court, for that matter, weighs in on a constitutional issue, it always makes it a little more tricky, complex, and nuanced to be able to pass something that survives constitutional muster or scrutiny, but certainly want to take a look at it and do a deep dive on that case. I'm going to take your invite up. I have done ride-alongs with the Holyoke Police, specifically the counter-narcotics team, but I have not gone out with them and looked at some of what you described and kind of did a deep dive on the homeless population. Rest assured that before this night is over, I will be reaching out to them, or at this point, I'll probably wait till tomorrow to reach out to them to ask to tag along on a ride along to visit some of this and get out there. And then Councilor, last, I couldn't agree with you more with respect to the gaming stuff. I guess all I can say is that, you know, I'm one senator. I look at that U.S. Supreme Court opinion that came out, and I say that not to deflect. I say that more just to point out that I am one senator who shares a view, and the view that I share is that the U.S. Supreme Court legalized this now, I think, approaching 4 years ago. I look at the revenue that we are losing on a daily basis to our sister states, and it's mind-boggling to me, and it's crazy. And I look at it as just another source of revenue for all of the issues that we're talking about, right? All of the issues we've talked about tonight, Chapter 90, Chapter 70, MSBA. You can make a very cogent and compelling argument that legalizing this and creating some type of legislative framework for this gaming is something that could contribute to all of this. So I'm with you 100%. I don't want to say we need to move urgently. We needed to move yesterday. We needed to move months ago. So all I can tell you is that I will continue, not begin, I will continue to say how much of a priority this is and be a reflection of my constituents who want to see this moved forward. So that's all I have on your topics. But again, all of them are worthy of a separate meeting. And obviously these are conversations that both of us are willing to continue with you and kind of talk about more and do a deep dive in.
Thank you.
Chair, yes,
Yep.
it's Joe McGivern, if I could, Chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Just quickly on the Soldiers Home, to Pat and John, I greatly appreciate what you're doing. I've kept a close eye on the plans and the talk and discussions, and I think it's so important to what we do. And John, I just learned something, you know, the difference between Chelsea and Holyoke. I didn't realize it was that much of a difference, and because I've always appreciated Holyoke and its importance. I think what we do for our veterans is very important. As I know you're a veteran, as you know I'm not, but I do work in Veterans Court in Holyoke, and I see a lot, and we have a good connection with Leeds for a lot of different reasons, and we have a great Veterans Affairs officer here in Holyoke. On the project, and Councilor Bartley is actually my ward counselor, so I always refer to him on this. But the Soldiers Home is on a hill, and John, I know you're the chair of your committee, and on the southwest of the Soldiers Home is a neighborhood in which I live in. I actually, at nighttime, when I go to bed, I look out the window and say a night prayer for the soldiers that veterans are still up in the home. That's how close we are. The hill, we have a very high water table in the neighborhood. It's shale. We have a water runoff. Part of it connected to the Soldiers Home was built in 1952 when water surface runoff was not an issue. It is nowadays, and the codes and the, regulations, all address that. This is a state project. Our city engineer has been working with, colleagues from the state. I'm not sure if you're aware, either one of you are aware of this, but he feels
I talked to Bob about this.
Okay, so he understands. I think the message is out there. I would just appreciate if both of you could keep on top of that, not just for my house, but for a very large neighborhood, hundreds of homes that are affected by this. And if this could be corrected, we would put a lot of relief to some significant water problems.
Yes, Joe, I'll jump in here because I've talked with Bob Parent about this, and I'm sure all of you know this, that we have an excellent city engineer, and he's in touch with the folks at DCAM who are doing the building project, and keeps me posted. And Senator, I have been remiss if I have not updated you on this issue. But yes, thank you for bringing that up. And I stay in touch with Bob about it, and he is right up in there with the folks at DCAM, asking them questions all the time about this.
Thank you.
Linda Vacant
Will
here.
obviously, Counselor, obviously, this is something, I want to know more about this. And obviously, Rep, you're not remiss about anything. We've got a million different things, don't worry about that. There's a million different things going, but I want to know more about this. And Counselor, rest assured that these concerns will be elevated, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. This is something vaguely, someone brought this up, but certainly not as poignantly as you just did. So please stay in contact. And this is probably something that I'd love to discuss even more offline with you very, very soon, because I want to make sure, obviously, I want to make sure that all the folks in that neighborhood are taken into account. So really thank you for bringing that up right now.
Thank you, and I appreciate the kind words. And just a little bit of housekeeping, Chair, and to Rep and Senator, Mayor Garcia has entered the chambers, just so you know he's here.
Wonderful. Thank you.
We stand?
Maybe next time. Thank you. Welcome, Mayor Garcia, and thank you, Councilor McGivern, for making sure that I'm aware of what's happening in council chambers. So I appreciate that.
It's Linda Vacant here. Could I be recognized just for a quick thing? Thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
So first of all, I just want to thank both of you, Rep. Duffy and Senator Velis, for coming down. Relative to the items that Councilor Bartley put forth, we've been struggling with the issues of safety in the city and trying to balance the safety concerns with the First Amendment concerns. And so I understand the desire to have a non-punitive approach to the situation and the circumstance, but I'm hopeful that with a deep look, we can come up with a win-win that is also keeping an eye on people moving safely through our public ways in the city, as we have an increasingly aging population here, as well as folks that have other needs that we're working every day to try to meet. So I'd appreciate that balanced look that I'm sure you will try to take on those issues. But mostly I want to thank you for coming down, and I want to thank Councilor Bartley for initiating this dialogue, because I think it's been a great thing for us here in Holyoke and the working relationship with you folks. So thank you.
Well said all the way around. I totally agree with you. A balanced approach, definitely.
Councilor
Yeah,
Bartley.
and I do think you can, I do think, and I hope what I said wasn't misconstrued. When I was talking about the First Amendment before, absolutely, we need to, I would argue, and I'm not sure everybody would agree with me, that the public safety of our constituents is the foremost obligation of every elected official, ensuring that public safety.
Yeah, John.
So absolutely.
John, so right in the, and I'm going to, because we got some other stuff we got to get to, but I appreciate
Yeah,
everybody's remarks.
of
But
course.
I just, John, right in the heart of the opinion, it says, this in no way precludes the legislature from amending the statute, okay? Very simple, straightforward, declarative sentence. So it says it right in the opinion. So, but I'll send it to you. But it really appreciate everybody doing this, and if the chair doesn't mind, I wouldn't mind making a motion that this has been complied with, because we've been here about an hour now, and we've got,
I'll second that.
yeah,
I'll second that.
Counselor, send me that opinion, please.
I will.
I just
All
want
right,
to say
thank you,
thank you to
everybody.
our special guests. It's always a pleasure to see both of you.
Oh, without a
But I
doubt.
think this means a lot to our constituents, your constituents, when you come online with us. Thank you.
Yeah, that's.
Anytime.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate both of you being here and answering our questions. And I look forward to having you back in, later in the year, especially as you start getting into your budget and just hearing what some priorities are. And so thank you both very much for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to be here with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the inviting. Great first meeting. Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
night, everybody.
Have a
Good
good
night,
evening.
everyone.
Good night.
Okay.
Great.
Madam Chair, if it makes sense to you, I'd like to see if we can maybe suspend the rules and take 2, 3, and if everybody's here, take
We
2,
should-
3, and 4 as a package?
We should vote on our motion on item 1.
Oh, well, okay, it's been complied with, right?
I seconded the motion that it was complied.
Oh,
with.
okay, so that's the motion.
Do you want us to vote?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, so moved. Wonderful. Yeah, so did I hear a motion to take 2, 3, and 4 up as a package?
So
I'll
moved.
second that.
Great. I believe we have Aaron Vega and John Dijek from the Office of Planning and Economic Development with us. Is that correct?
Correct. Good evening.
Hello, Dream Team from the 4th floor annex. Thank you for being here this evening.
Madam Chair, Michael Maiardi is in the audience.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Thank you so much, Joe. And I also believe that we have Diane Smith, who is from Wayfinders. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Aaron Vega and John to give us a brief overview on these orders that we have before us here tonight.
Sure. Well, good evening, everybody, and good to see you. Pretty straightforward. What's before you, obviously, Madam Chair, congratulations on your first meeting and taking on this committee and having the Vice Chair with you as well. So, as you know, Madam Chair, from your time in the office a few years ago, as we try to move property through city property, city council process, surplus property, we would do the RFP as collaboration with the purchasing office and got those bids in. So here we are back to you to present the offers that have been vetted and approved by the mayor. And so this is the last step in that process. And so I'll let John, I think you've all received information on the properties and the proposals before you tonight. We are trying to move 2 a month. That's the sort of process we're putting in place and working with the law department and the purchasing. So here's this batch for this month. And we do have Mike Moriarty, OneHolyoke Development, obviously well known in the city, been doing some great projects for us of late, great partner with a lot of collaborations going on. So he's got a proposal. And then Wayfinders, who we know obviously has a long recognition, long history of doing work in Holyoke, and the recent Library Commons success just speaks volumes. So really happy to have them have another proposal, which is part of a bigger picture that we're working with them on. So really excited about some of the focus on High Street that we're bringing to the table. So with that, I'll turn it over to John, and then obviously we're here for any questions. And of course, the petitioners are here as well. Pretty standard language. Obviously, the reverter is in there. All the sort of agreements that we always have in place for due diligence and for each side to do their work. So, John.
Good evening, everyone. And as I think Aaron covered most of the information in terms of what we're doing, but hopefully everyone had a chance to see the information we provided. First off the bat, I saw Attorney Bissonette. I think he joined us, and the law department was an integral part of this process. And I believe agenda item 2 is the proposal from OneHolyoke CDC for 2 lots on at the end of Walnut Street, closer to Sargent, that have been vacant for a number of years. This is, I think, the first time that I can recall we put it out for proposals. And what's really, I think, interesting and important is to note that it's not only these 2 properties that OneHolyoke has an interest in, it's the neighborhood revitalization. And I'm sure Mike and can talk about it a little bit more if that's needed. But the intent is to build 4 housing units. And there was ARPA funds, city ARPA funds awarded for this development a few months back. So I think that's generally the highlights of it. It's a 4-unit housing development, and I think the other good thing is that the work is slated to happen this year. So we'd like to see the work get started. So I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions from our counselors?
Yep.
Councilor Bartley is
Yep.
looking to be recognized.
Yeah, I don't know if she can, yeah, maybe, yeah, it's
Yep.
just tough.
Okay, Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, thank you, Tessa, really appreciate you. I definitely want to hear from Mike, Mike's 2 cents, and maybe, there's a questions either to Mike or to John. Well, maybe, let me just go through the chair to Mike first. Mike, these will be tax-paying, it's a regular residential property tax rate, right? So we're not.
Correct.
Okay, that's correct. Okay, and just Mike, they were yelling at us last night for not having not having the mic up close to us. So I don't want you to be getting yelled at too. We were admonished last night. We're too far away from the mic. Sister Judy can't hear us, and that is intolerable.
I've never been accused of being too quiet.
Well, not with Sister Judy listening too. So I want to make sure she. The other thing, Mike, I did see in here the caveat relative to the deferring the 10,000.
They said no. I'm fine. We're paying.
Okay. So yeah,
it's worth a shot.
Yeah, I wasn't super keen on that, but that's okay. Okay. So it was worth a shot. They said no, and I'm glad they said. So you're going to pay the 10,000 upon execution, upon closing, right? So you'll do that, and then you'll do your due diligence, and you'll get your permits or whatever you got to do, and then you'll build a house, and then ultimately the whole thing with the reverter thing. So it just, I know we do that, and I know there's certain of us that really want to keep the reverter, but your plan with the 2 homes, it'll always be how the homes are going to ultimately be titled. Will they be with One Holyoke, or do you ultimately, so you develop them and you sell them to?
Correct. So the process, and it's the only difference between this and probably the last 100 duplexes that we've created, the main one, is that the funding source is going to be ARPA instead of home partnership funding, which is what we've most often relied on, a source of federal funding that comes with a lot of restrictions attached to it. But the model remains exactly the same. And it is that we take a vacant lot, we put a 2-family home or 2 units of housing on it, and we sell it to a single family. That single family does have some deed restrictions, but it's their home. It's deeded to them outright. They have to remain at the property for, it's typically 15 years. That is, those specific terms will be negotiated through the Office of Community Development and the Mayor's office as we go forward, but there will be some period of restriction. And the reason for that is we've taken the federal money to make sure we're providing access to this housing to people who otherwise wouldn't have access. However, the only time we check their means is when they make the purchase. After that, as has happened time and time again, they then have a rental income that helps support their household. They are then the owners, the residents of the neighborhood for a long time. They're paying the full real estate tax based on the fully assessed value every single year. And then at the end of the 15 years, they own it free and clear like everybody else. So if you go down to the flats, for instance, where we've used this model since the 1970s, very few of the houses are still restricted because they were built so many years ago. And the families have had the full benefit of this asset building that is very much a point of this process. Mm-hmm. So it's not simply to create an endless stream of housing that is just for folks at the bottom, but rather it is to help lift families so that they have an asset of value and are able to be, stalwart, longtime residents of the neighborhood, full taxpayers. And so that's the one thing that doesn't change.
So One Holyoke develops it, and then you guys sell it to, you sell it, and they get a mortgage or something? And,
correct.
Okay, so they get but meanwhile you get this 15-year restriction where they got to not sell the house? Is that pretty much it?
So if they sell the house, they have to come back and means test their buyer.
Okay. So there's a whole process here, and
Something we've been doing for years, and we assist them with it whenever these things come up, which is rarely. Usually the people buy and stay.
All right, and then the lots we've recently given some. All right, sorry about that. I just lost my train of thought. No, hold on, Mike. just for the public, there's just,
He's all right.
okay, all right, that's, okay, that's what we said, okay. So, all right, so Mike, when we look at Walnut Street,
Yep.
okay, so we've got, it's pretty congested. We've recently given out some, what's the phrase, some variances on special permits because, especially at the bottom of Beach Street and some other places, because the lots were so tiny. We want to create more housing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Do you foresee that being necessary, or are these lots size sufficient for what you intend to build?
They are sufficient. We are actually exploring whether a privately owned condemned house next to this lot can be acquired in a manner that's affordable. And if we did that, we'd actually expand the size of the lot a little bit. See, we already own one additional lot on this same block. That's got 70 feet of frontage. Each of these lots has 50 feet of frontage. This is in the downtown residential zone. 55 feet is normally the minimum size, but in the DR, it is what's consistent with the neighborhood. So these lots both used to have houses on them. The house on both sides are 50-foot lots. So we're able to conform simply using these lots. That is a sufficient amount of space to create 2 units of housing. So we will be building as a matter of right, unless there's some design issues that we have to deal with, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But as a general rule, this is properly zoned for what we want to do, and they're properly sized. Any alterations we make are because it will be an improvement on the project.
I see.
Thank you.
I see Aaron Vega's hand is up.
Just a quick comment, Madam Chair, and to Councilor Bartley, Vice Chair, and John and I are actually working with the law department to kind of simplify that reverter language that's been in there previously. Still have just kind of clarify to just be 1 year. And so now, so I don't know if you've looked at it recently, but there's a whole sort of breakdown, and we just want to make it clear. And again, we want to see these projects happen. So that's our goal.
Thank you. So I see Councilor Coelho has his hand up, and then I wasn't sure if Councilor Bacon also had her hand up as well.
Yes.
I can let Councilor Reagan go first. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. I just have a general question because I'm new to the committee, and I was just wondering when the homes historically sold after the 15 years,
Yeah.
did the owner tenancy remain pretty stable in those situations as well?
So we've done so many houses, I'd actually have to commission somebody to do a study to give you a really straight answer.
Well, but you probably have a sense of it.
I do. And so I would say at this point, and if you think primarily of the Flats neighborhood where we had the biggest sort of saturation, I would say a fair number of those houses are now owned by investors and non-owner occupants, probably a little less than half, but close to it.
Oh.
And otherwise, it is still owner occupied. And, a few houses that are distressed, but some of these are 30, 40 years old at this point.
Right, right. So you'd say there's been about, in the long term, about a 50-50 success rate in keeping them owner occupied, which is the goal.
Correct.
Right? I mean, yeah.
100% successful within those 15
Yes.
years. We're then at the mercy of what the market's going to do.
Exactly.
On the other side of that. And I would say a lot of what I'm saying about the flats, because it's not been specifically studied, is just the general market trends that we know are going on in the neighborhoods.
Right. So, and just out of curiosity, I know right now we have it at the 15 years. Is that something that's dictated by the state? I mean, could it be 20 years? I mean, I'm just curious.
And so, as a general rule, it follows the funding source that we get. So very often we've been using a particular type of grant from the federal government that's processed through the Office of Community Development. And with that one requires anything between 5 to 20 years, depending on the type of project that you're dealing with. The name of the game for that, for us, has been consistency. If it was somebody who had 15 years, 10 years ago, there's absolutely no justification it wouldn't be 15 years now. And so...
in the same
correct.
property.
Yeah. And, well, no, using the same type of housing structure, which is complex. In this case, the only reason there'd be some variation, this ARPA funding is a kind of unique one-time federal funding source that came out of the COVID relief bills. And so it doesn't have the same level of regulations attached to it. The general sense and our belief as an organization is there's still no reason to make any serious change in the way we're doing it. It worked, keep doing it.
Okay, so you want
That's
to
our
keep
attitude.
it at the 15?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I just wondered, you know, with,
Yeah, I mean, you know, could we go 5 years shorter? If for some reason somebody made a case for why we should, that's on the table. We could change it, but I don't know why.
I was more thinking
Yeah.
the other way.
Going out to 20?
I mean, in terms of keeping it owner occupied, if
Yeah.
that's the goal. That's
yeah.
all.
And I will tell you, there is a reason for that. And the only argument for shorter term periods is you really are impacting a person's ownership right and their ability to make use of the property and fully realize the value of that asset building the longer you put unusual restrictions on
True.
it. So I mean, there was one form of state funding that wanted 50 years. We didn't even apply for it.
Right.
Because that family will never get that value.
Right.
So that's the thought process.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilor Puelo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question for my priority. I'm new, so I'm trying to understand this whole process. So I've got the letter pulled up, and it says, so $355,000 of funding was awarded. We're going to build 4 units of housing. So is that 2 homes that are going to be built, and then they're each going to be sold for $200,000?
Yeah, that's basically the funding stream. And by the way, there's going to be another round of ARPA, which we will certainly be applying for. We're currently looking at a couple of other funding resources and potential partnerships that can help us stretch these dollars quite a bit. The 355 and the sales price by itself would get us to about 1.75 houses. So part of my job as a developer is figure out where that other 0.25 is coming from, and we'll get it done.
So are there any restrictions, like with the ARPA money? Like, is the ARPA money specifically for housing construction or development?
Oh, no, it was one of the broadest funding requests I've ever seen. People applied for it from everything from doing more internet access in the city to building wastewater treatment plants to providing human services to providing housing. If you recall, from last summer, there was about $14.5 million of this ARPA funding available for Mayor Murphy to disperse. At the end of the day, I believe he dispersed about $1 million of housing, and the other 13 went to many, many other sources. So this was about as broad a funding stream as I've seen, even broader than the Community Development Block Grant, which again is another form of very widely usable funding at a local decision-making level. Just kind of a unique source that's probably only going to happen this one time.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is I don't know. I mean, I'm new, but it just seems like we're kind of getting a little, not a lot of money in return for this. I mean, you guys are going to sell these 2 houses and you're getting $400,000 back. All we're getting is $10,000.
So
I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would just say to you, providing home ownership gives you the benefit of receiving tax revenues forever that these lots have not provided for years. So that's added to the $10,000. In order to make it affordable and even market possible in the downtown area, it requires a deep subsidy. It's just, you can't do this unless you go 40, 50% of the actual cost of generating this kind of housing. And so rental housing is somewhat more efficient in that way because they're usually going multifamily, but then you never have that asset building possibility. You never have that home ownership. So you're always balancing those things, one off against the other. As a matter of fact, my belief about the price is that it's $9,999 too much. We used to get lots for $1 and build all across the city. And the reason was the vacancy is a devastating harm to the neighborhood all the time. The restoration to the tax rolls is a benefit that never goes away. If you've got a 4% tax rate, keep in mind that every 25 years, you basically buy the house another time. So that's something the city's always going to get.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions for either Aaron, John, or Mike?
If I could, Chair.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll go after you, John.
Thank you. I more of a comment, and an appreciation, and Mike knows, and I think Aaron and John know as well, that I'm a big fan of the history of this program. OneHolyoke has kept it alive, doing a fantastic work, within all the neighborhoods of the city. The deep roots of Old Holyoke development and, the early days of the duplexes that were built under the guidance of that program. And I just think it's incredible to be able to take, the city to be able to participate in this, because we don't want to own property that we don't use. We want property to be in the private or semi-private sector of the city. And it makes sense to allow OneHolyoke and to be able to put this stuff back onto the tax rolls. Earlier, speaking with our state senator and rep, I mentioned breaking the poverty cycle. Education, jobs, housing is the third part of breaking the poverty cycle, is putting people into home ownership, is how we put people into the position to better themselves, to better their family, and to go forward. And this is a big part of it, and thank you for the work you do, and you certainly have my support on the transfer of these properties.
Thank you.
Councilor Bartley?
Thank you. I'll be. I can't emphasize enough what Joe just said. Home ownership is obviously critical, because when you own a piece of the rock, you actually care about what's going on in your neighborhood and what's going on the streets and all that. And hopefully this will help clean up Walnut Street, which could use it. Just a couple of other small points. I noticed on 299-301 Walnut, Holyoke Housing Authority was in the chain of title. So at some point they must have had some kind of an ownership interest there, and God knows what they did with it. Mike, at some point I'm going to want to ask you about. This doesn't have to be now, but one of my major complaints, a couple of councilors here have heard this multiple times from me, is Holyoke Housing Authority's total absence of having a stake as far as paying a pilot goes. They pay under $4,000 a month. The last 2 fiscal years, Mike, they've transferred $1.1 million to MMDT, so they could, with monies that they have unrestricted, and I hope Councilor Vera, you can hear this too, $1.1 million of monies that they just had, and they threw it in MMDT. Well, what's that? It's a Mass Municipal Depository Trust. Well, why would they do that? So they can take their $1.1 million and just make interest on it. Now think about that. They've got $1.1 million of their money that they could use for the City of Holyoke, but they take that 1.1, and these are public votes in the minutes, so you can easily verify what I'm saying. They took that money and they just threw it in a bank, a special bank, so they can make interest, more interest. Can you imagine? So I don't know I'm just following what Council Playo said. So, does OneHolyoke pay a pilot to the city? That's just something, I don't need an answer now, Mike.
Oh, no, I want to answer it.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, so we don't pay a pilot. We
Okay.
pay our taxes. We pay over $200,000 a year in taxes.
Even better. So, okay, so you're kind of similar. Mike, don't get mad.
I'm not mad.
Don't get mad at me.
I'm good.
Okay. All
We
right.
pay our taxes, though. People
Okay.
don't, and it's
Okay.
a misunderstanding people have about nonprofits. Not all of them are treated as charities. We are not. We're a taxpayer.
Valley
just
Opportunity
like
Council,
everybody
same
else.
thing. The Valley VOC pays its taxes. Okay, so OneHolyoke CDC, great. So you pay taxes. That's even better. And the commercial rate?
Oh, no, we're residential. It's our apartments.
Okay, so your business, so your apartments pay taxes. Okay, apartment buildings you own pay the residential rate, right?
We do pay the commercial rate on our 70 Lyman Street office.
70 Lime City pay commercial. Okay, so that's for the public, and that's helpful to me. One thing I just want to clarify, Mike, you said $1 million. Well, Mayor Murphy absolutely put $1.3 million directly to Holyoke Housing Authority for the South Holyoke project. So at least $1.3 million of ARPA funds went to HHA. So it wasn't $1 million; it was at least $1.3 million. So just for the public record. But otherwise, Tessa and the committee chair, I do support this, and so I think OneHolyoke does a good job. But sometimes we're going to ask questions, Mike. I'm sorry.
course.
That's the way it is.
No, happy to
okay?
answer.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And I see Councilor Puello's hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I mean, I didn't mean, I didn't want Mike to get upset or anything or anybody else watching. I was just asking general thought, and that's great that everybody pays taxes. Because in my head, I'm thinking, this is $355,000 of taxpayer dollars, and now we're going to sell the taxpayers, $200,000 houses a pop with their money again, and then we're making more money. So that's just where the question came from. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Do we have any questions further related to this?
Well,
order?
I'll make a motion to recommend to the council that we approve the conveyance
For item 2.
Great.
for item 2.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any discussion? Further discussion? All right. Seeing none, the ayes have it.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'll
Thank
look
you.
forward to the full
Thanks, Mike.
council and getting to work. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate you being here. And I'd like to move to the last 2 items on our agenda. These are related to the property transfers proposed by Wayfinders. John or Aaron, would you like to provide a little insight?
So these are the properties that when we were in front of City Council a few months back on High Street that we were able to put out for RFP. Wayfinders answered the RFP and had a great proposal. They are working with us to look at a wider project around that area, bringing some stabilization and some focus to Newton and Cabot Street. So this is maybe the first step in that. I know that we have M.G.L and Diane from Wayfinders here tonight, and so again, another partner that we've been working with. Obviously, Library Commons, as many of you know, is now open and occupied, and some great stories and some good people having some stable housing there. So, but again, I think you have the bid sheet and whatnot. Everyone should have received that. There's Diane, and so I don't know, John, if there's anything else I should frame for this one, or just go right to Diane.
I'll just add that it's good to note these are 2 separate orders, whereas the proposal previously discussed was 1 order because the properties were packaged. But another really great partner with the efforts of the city for rehabbing the housing stock, and I think the proposal speaks for itself. It's part of a larger, as Aaron mentioned, a larger vision that we're working on for parts of High Street, which I know has come up in the DGR committee over the last few years, how that area kind of south of Appleton Street really needs a lot of attention. These, I'll also mention these lots, were really difficult with the Essex House years ago and the situation there. But with some of the infrastructure improvements planned over the next few years, as well as some other developments happening in the area, we're really looking forward to seeing some really good improvements in this area. So again, happy to answer any questions on the process or where I can. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Diane, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, M.G.L, as also for being here. Do you have anything to add about these proposals that would be relevant for our council?
Thank you, Madam Chair and council members. Actually, in the interest of time, I'm just happy to take questions. The proposal that we've put together is basically a development of a mixed-use, mixed-income proposal that would be on House Street as part of an overall strategy that we're working with the City of Holyoke to implement.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Councilors, do we have any questions for related to these items?
I do.
Wonderful. Go for it, Councilor Bartley.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Just to John, just a similar question sort of I was asking, or to the petitioner, either one. These are going to be tax-paying entities once developed?
Our requirement is that they will be.
Yeah, and just a compliment to John and to Aaron for keeping this going, because I think OPED has heard, well, some of us, but I think all of us, loud and clear. Geriatric Authority comes right to mind, but other developments that were not interested really in seeing non-tax-paying entities perpetuate themselves. So I see so John, or anybody really, how did this come to be? So we had this is a big gaping hole in the middle of High Street, which was the Essex House, which you can remind me of the year that collapsed.
2014.
2014, I thought it was 15, so there you go. Okay, so 2014, John, and it's been a big gaping hole in the middle of High Street that time. And so this is Wayfinders, and so we're impressed with what they're doing over by the library. And what's the vision here? Are we having I saw 5 stories, or we have what size apartments, and how many apartments and how many commercial spaces? Why don't you sort of just delve into a little bit for each of the parcels? And I think I saw, John, each of the parcels at 15,000. I think that's the way I saw that, but just correct me if I'm wrong on that one too. So if somebody could just sort of just expand upon the actual development of the, is it going to be one building that's going to be built, or is it going to be 2 buildings? I'm just not clear at this point. Anybody?
It's our expectation. It's our expectation that we would have 1 building on the 2 lots, and that would be 32 units. It would be a 5-story building, and a lot of things have to happen between now and when we get the whole project underway. But that's what we were proposing, is to have a mixed-use building, 5 stories. My understanding, the Essex building had been up to 8 stories, so this is really within the scale of High Street. So that's our expectation, that we would have potentially a 5-story building with commercial on the first floor, 32 units. We're thinking they're generally 1-bedroom units, maybe a couple of 2-bedroom units, and being mixed income as well.
And what about parking?
The parking would be off-site. We would have to work with the city to understand how we would arrange parking.
It would be off-site, okay. So, and that's not unreasonable. But so we've got we've got 2 pretty lonely decks that don't seem to get a lot of love and attention. So that would be something that I'd love to see once this is developed, that the city and you and your tenants would, in particular with the Maritopia garage, so that'd be something I'd love to see utilized more. And even more than that, I'd love to see the lower deck of Maritopia not be used as a police parking lot. I'd like to see that be used for paying customers. I don't remember the vision on that deck being 60% police cars. I'm not even sure why that is, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be all HPD cruisers parked over there, and public vehicles. There should be a way to accommodate what the police needs on the campus of 138 Appleton Street, and let the public start paying for parking spaces, and that would be an exciting use to me for that. But so maybe this is a and is it Miss Smith? Miss Smith, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I thought I had your name right, but I wasn't sure. Okay, so you said 32 residential units, primarily 1 bedroom, but some 2 bedrooms. And then on the first floor, I love the idea. You're thinking some kind of a commercial, 1 commercial tenant or 2, or is it hard to say?
I think it's hard to say at this point. We would want to, again, work with the city in understanding some of the assets they'd like to build within that space. As we're looking at South High Street and how that neighborhood is going to be built and redeveloped, kind of what are the things that are really necessary, what types of tenants, commercial tenants, should Wayfinders be looking for to complement what our intentions are.
Well, I'm going to encourage you strongly. You've got the Ward 1 counselor here in the middle of the table. You've got the Ward 2 counselor on the computer, on the Zoomer. So I really encourage you to talk to those 2. And then just one other small item, which Ms. Smith, I hope you, and I know the counselors are aware of this. I know Joe and Linda are. that finally, hallelujah, Mass DOT, I should never say this because, but they've only been saying since 2014, Joe, when we first started, we had the person for High and Maple. Yeah. So we're going on close to year number 8 with the High and Maple total renovation of these 2 thoroughfares. So new pavement, new markings, new lights, new bike lanes, whatever else they're going to do there. So amen to that. And so I think that's going to be a public amenity that should help. I think liven up the area. The last thing is, and I know the Ward 1 and 2 councilors would really like to get involved, hands on this. One thing that I would like to hear from your perspective going forward is public lighting. It kind of stops and ends at Cabot Street. I mean, it's like pitch black until it's going down High Street. It can't just be me saying this to the gas and electric. It can't be. I can't be the only one noticing it. But it would be nice if some of the stakeholders and the councilors that really represent that area would just really sort of dive in and see if getting more public lights in that area. I think brighten up the area. I think would go. I think that would go a long way, really. So from the public end, I know you're a quasi, but from the public end, we want to attract more developers like your corporation, to the extent we can. But I really think it's a two-way street. So we certainly want to hear from you, Ms. Smith, not just in these Zoom meetings, but on a regular basis. Not just calling up McGivern and Bartley because we're old timers and we're ready to ship out. But it's so important that you communicate directly on a regular basis, not just with Mr. Vega, Mr. Jajek, they're wonderful, but to the ward counselors that in which you're developing things, because they need to hear from you. So I just wish you would consider that going forward. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate that input, and we will certainly follow up.
Thank you, Councilor Bartley. Do we have other questions from the council chambers or other councilors on the Zoom?
If I could, Madam Chair.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Councilor McGivern. Thank you, Diane, for being here. Ms. Smith, it's a pleasure. I'm a big fan of what's going on in the Library Park area. It's tremendous. I'm just a little curious, is this proposal, when it gets through design phase, it gets to where you make what you think can happen there, the commercial property will be rented to people, or will it become kind of a condominium type thing?
We expect to lease at this point. We wouldn't condo. That's not the model that we're using to condo the residential from the commercial.
Okay. And obviously the apartment units are the same thing. They're rental leases?
Yes, they're all
Okay.
rentals, yeah.
And the money that comes in from the rents, Wayfinders is quasi-public, not-for-profit, or is it for-profit?
We're not quasi-public, we are not-for-profit.
But you're not-for-profit?
Yes, we're not quasi, we are not-for-profit.
Okay, thank you, sorry. And if I could, just one more question to Aaron or John. The property tax, you say you require it. Is the property tax the 100% property tax from the get-go?
Yes, that's the requirement, 100%.
Okay. And is there the standard reverter clause on the sale of the property?
You see it here.
Yep.
It's here.
Yes, I believe the copy was included in the packet. I'm just scrolling through it now, but yes, I'm just trying to see it in there, but it will be, all our sales require a reverter.
Okay, no, I understand that. I was just asking. And we don't have a final project in front of us. So what would the reverter be looking at? What parameters in terms of what Wayfinders will be committed to do? How do you judge that?
I think it's going to some of the comments being made already. It's definitely communication, right? So I mean, it's we're going to be communicating about a larger project with the TDI fellow possibility again coming in, and Wayfinders was already a partner in that, and we'll be bringing the counselors on that. I've again, as always, and Will knows this, and Jose and I, we've been talking. So our office is always open to meet with John or I, talk about any of this stuff process-wise, as far as RFPs and the TDI fellows or any of the stuff that we're talking about tonight. If I'm happy to meet with you to get you up to speed on any of it.
Yeah, and that's a good question, because our standard reverter is 2 years, and if this were to be approved, this would go beyond 2 years with final completion. But I think we would look at the project meeting certain benchmarks along the way, and I think part of it is just seeing that there's progress, and if there's a need to extend, that's a possibility. But again, looking at benchmarks that the project is proceeding, and I think there are several steps that we'll find out because of whether it's the funding or the design. But as Aaron was saying, it's really an impressive project that could really help this area of High Street, along with the other longer range planning that we're doing.
I agree wholeheartedly. I just wanted to ask the questions, kind of a devil's advocate, but Wayfinders has a good track record, but things change as time goes on, and I just want to make sure that we have the protections there. That if I'm all in favor of selling property at this price, for the purposes of what we're hearing, because it brings back a lot more in the long run. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page, and I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
And if I could just real quick, I'll keep it quick. Just and to your point, Joe. I mean, Wayfinders has proven with the Library Commons project that they're in it for the long game, right? So I think they'd love to build this five-story units next summer and get started, but the funding's got to come through, as you know. I think there's a positive that there's a lot of money out there now for this stuff. Obviously, the negative that we're seeing also in a lot of these development projects recently is the supply chain issues, and things are taking longer, and our costs are up. So there's also sort of a riding that storm out of getting the materials and getting the right labor costs. Just three quick comments to some of the other stuff that's been said before. They're not looking at doing condoizing the property. They will be leasing that ground floor space, which I think is really helpful for when we talk about small businesses and entrepreneurs, which they're also interested in. But we've also been talking to them about that idea for other properties along High Street. That we've talked to a number of building owners who may have the commercial ground floor open, as you all know, and the upper floor is empty, which again creates a lot of that darkness and just that sort of emptiness along High Street. I'd love to use that model where there's a condoized partnership, and actually Wayfinders could be that partner in taking the upper floors for residential. That could be a way that they build their expansion projects there. So that is definitely ideas we talk about, lighting, as you mentioned, and just I want to reassure everybody that we are always promoting the agreements through DPW to get parking spots in our garages. The other developers along High Street at some of the buildings down High Street, and of course right next to, we've talked to about 295 High Street. There's a lot of projects going on with Vadim and his team, and we've already worked with them to say that one of the advantages that you'd have, parking in the garage at a very affordable rate for your residents. So we think that's a great asset. So thank you for the investments in those parking garages. I know it wasn't always a popular vote when I was there, but I'm hoping that it'll come to fruition now.
I appreciate that, and I think if you haven't heard, but I think that Mayor Garcia, with the City Council support, is reactivating the Downtown Parking Advisory Committee, because as we see, new residents being built, new commercial properties being open, we need to look at a comprehensive plan. That the one we have is falling apart, but we have, we're lucky to have the luxury of available parking. We just got to make it work, and the plan work so it is affordable and practical for everybody.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion before we take a motion to vote on these property sales?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of the conveyances for 3 and 4 to the city to this full City Council.
Second.
Seriously.
And third.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. With that looks like our
Motion
agenda.
To adjourn.
Wonderful. Is there a second?
Good night, everybody.
Second.
Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Thank you all.
See you
Thanks
all.
everyone for being here, and we'll be in touch for our next meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
Great
Good job,
job,
Tess.
Chair.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.